Hey, if you're enjoying Hooks and Ladders, and why wouldn't you be enjoying Hooks and Ladders? Be sure to like and subscribe, follow us on social media, and hey, head on over to songstudio.ca to check out what we're up to. If you sign up for our mailing list, you'll be the first to know everything that's coming up and everything special that we got going on at SongStudio. You won't regret it. Hey, welcome to Hooks and Ladders. What you're about to see is part of what we did at the SongStudio workshop in Toronto in July 2022. There'll be lots more to see. We're just going to roll it out a little bit at a time. So sit back and enjoy. And if you want to know more about SongStudio, visit www.songstudio.ca and check us out. Enjoy.
You should monitor it yourself. If you have a song in Degrassi and you see, for example, that your royalty statement comes in and it's $27 for that play, and you're like, well, but it played, I think it's played in 150 countries in the last year. You might know, you could call your SOCAN rep, all that stuff. It's a bit tricky. I'm sure there's millions of dollars sitting in a black box somewhere. Mm-hmm. But I think that they try to make reporting they try to do as best as they can because they're collecting from Germany and Australia. They might be a year behind. Collecting from China might be super difficult. Collecting from some other countries, a little nefarious in their dealings, right? But I'd like to think that it's a little bit more accurate, at least more accurate than 40 or 50 years ago.
Ian Thomas tells a great story about when his song "Painted Ladies." You remember "Painted Ladies and a Bottle of Wine, Mama"? He started getting breakout play in the United States, and this is back before there were computers involved, and he was a member of BMI. So he called the BMI rep because his check was for $20,000, and he thought it should be higher. He didn't know how much higher, but he thought it should be higher. And he spoke with the BMI rep at a high level, and because he was a hit maker, this song was breaking out, so he had some clout. He could talk to somebody higher up, and he said, "Yeah, I really thought it would be more." And she said, "How much more did you think it would be?" And he said, "I thought it'd be $150,000, And she said, "Okay." And he got a check for $150,000 US. So that's when it was the Wild West. Now it really is. Wow. There are still, I know, it's amazing, but there are still Wild West aspects to it.
It sounds like a bribe.
Yeah, yes.
Because I bet you $300,000 came in.
Well, that's the thing.
That's the point.
Yeah, that's the thing. You don't really know, But as Michael points out, in certain territories, they're not as forthcoming with data and money. And so forth. So it's still a bit Wild Westy there, but for the most part, that stuff's been taken care of.
Yeah, I think so. And in the 70s and 80s and 90s, I wasn't born yet, but back in that time, they would say if you had a number one hit on Billboard, you'd see $1 million in royalties, which was because it was played on radio in the US, and they obviously played it a cajillion times so that you would see basically $1 million. Now, you wouldn't necessarily see it, but it would generate $1 million worth of royalties. Your publisher, maybe you have a co-writer, depends what your deals are, blah, blah, blah. But it's $1 million song.
Yeah. And
so what number did that song get to you? Top 10, you think?
Painted Ladies? I think it got top 10, yeah.
It would be definitely more than $150,000.
Yeah, I would think so. And although at that point, maybe it was lower, I'm not sure. But and at that point, the Performing Rights Societies paid out every 6 months rather than every quarter. So it would have accumulated that much more. When I've scored films or TV shows, as the composer, sometimes I get an opportunity to put songs in as well, which is great. But what I've found, and with no disrespect to the creators of those shows, but it can be frustrating, is that for directors and editors and people ahead of me in line, it's almost like a holiday for them to deal with music. They're like, okay, now the fun. I've been dealing with all the hard stuff, the picture stuff, the props, and the scheduling and the budgeting and so forth. But now we can deal with music, and they have a favorite song, and they think this would be perfect. They may not consider what it looks like against the picture or with the emotional tenor of the film at that point, but they want to put the song in, and you have to kind of fight that sometimes. Do you what it can lead to is temp love. Where the temp score, the songs put in by those various people, maybe most prominently the editor, who will use the song to cut the scene to, right? So they'll put in their favorite song, maybe their brother-in-law's band, and they'll put it in, and then during subsequent playbacks, the rest of the people fall in love with the way that works because it's been cut to that song. And then the music supervisor has to step in, or the composer, but the music supervisor will step in and say, yeah, but I could get you, these songs. And how difficult does that make your life?
It can make it difficult. It's also part of the job, to be honest. So it's just another day at the office, as they say. We dealt with that a lot early on. It's not as I haven't experienced it as much, weirdly enough, in the last 5-6 years. But let's say 10 plus years ago, we would get a cut with a Prince song in it and a Stones song, and it was cut to it. And we would see there's various stages of cuts. There's like an assembly. This is film. Let's talk TV. There's like an editor's assembly, and then there's a director's cut and a producer's cut and a rough cut and a fine cut and a lock cut, basically. So hopefully we would get to see something early on, but we also try to work with the editors and people and get them songs in advance that they can afford. So when we see something with Prince in it or something like that, we immediately say, let's change the song right away. And then you get a call and you're like, well, you think we can get that Prince song? And you basically say, we might be able to get it. Two things. One, it's just going to get denied. Or if we do get it, you have to show them a scene, which you might not want to do. And it might be $100,000, which that's the budget for the entire season of a TV show sometimes, right? So you have to be diplomatic, but you also have to have some ideas. You can't just say no. You have to say, we can't get the song. Here's 6 ideas. You have to be prepared for something like that. And people usually understand. Sometimes they're like, let's just try to get it. I'm like, but we've got 2 more weeks, and then the biggest issue we have, the biggest challenge is when we get hired on a project late in the game, just to change the subject, but come back to it. And they say, here's 5 songs. We would like you, we don't need your creative. We just want you to license it. You have great relationships, etc. Okay, great. So how long do I have? Well, we mix the film in 2 weeks. And 3 of the 5 songs are, let's say it's a James Brown, and let's say it's a Coldplay song, and maybe some other middle established band that we think we can get. But all of it's going to cost a lot of money. And I explain that to a producer. Most of the time, it's kind of a first, second time producer or director. And I say, I think you're not going to get the song. Well, we have to try to get the songs. I'm like, I'm going to try, but we need plans B and C. And then that 2 weeks is filled with, we work on a lot of projects at the same time. And this is not a woe is Michael thing at all. This is just part of what we do, is that we have to then look for songs that hopefully they can afford, pitch them, and sometimes it's 3 or 4 or 5 per scene, and hopefully get them out of their temp love of that song. 95% of the time, I tell them right away, you're not going to get the song. Even if you had $1 million, they're just not going to license it for your film. And I think most people are fairly understanding. I think managing expectations is a super big part of our job. Yeah. And what they and one thing that is really exciting for me is when we talk to producers and say, you don't need the top 40 hits to make an extraordinarily brilliant soundtrack. You can find independent songs. You can find bands that are, have artists who are 2 or 3 years on a label and they're just rising. You don't need Shawn Mendes song, and his songs would work great. To me, the most exciting thing, and I think that creatively producers and directors really love, is when you find those gems, those songs that you find under a rock, that you find singer-songwriters like you guys, and a song just resonates. And running up that hill, a great example, a known song. What's cool about that, and I haven't seen Stranger Things, only season 1, is that it's a 20-plus-year-old song. Was it 30 years old? How old is that?
30, 35, something like that, yeah.
That's what's also exciting. And what can be exciting about the older generational artists is they are going to gain a brand new audience for people who have never really heard that song from 30 years ago. And most of the people watching that show weren't born when that song came out. Maybe they listened to it because their parents did. So there are ways, even coming back to it, there are ways of taking that really popular song, that their template song, and coming up with a strategy, which is also what we do, to try to pitch it, which is probably what Nora Felder, the supervisor, did with Stranger Things and Running Up That Hill. You've got a brand new audience. They probably haven't heard the song before. Here's a little bit of money. It's also Stranger Things. They have a bit of money. That helps. They were lucky that she was a fan of the show. And if I were her, I'd give all the money back, because the publicity that she's got, the amount of, the thing's jumped 1,000,000%.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know if that answered the question, but I tried in my roundabout way. We usually don't listen to demos. It's hard to listen to demos. Yeah, and there's 2 reasons for it, actually. It's a good question. I get that a lot. Like, can we just send you a demo, and if you like it, then that'll give me encouragement to go into the studio and do it. 2 things. One is, you don't need my encouragement to go create something fantastic. I'm one set of ears and 7 billion sets of ears out there, and if your music doesn't speak to me, it could speak to another 300 million people. Yeah, and it's tough, because what happens if 2 things. I might really like it, and then you go and, let's say you spend $500 of your money and you didn't really want to spend it, but you're like, I'll go in and record it. I really like it, but I might not be able to find a place for it for 5 years or ever. Certain ways we catalog things. There's folders of jazz, blues, heavy metal, country. Sometimes I just remember certain things that I've listened to. There's a song that stuck with me forever called Ciao for Now by this guy named Luigi Sabatini. Stuck with me forever. I don't know, I also visited his restaurant and befriended him, so that's helpful, but it just was different. But we have pop, blues. And here's the thing, I might get a pitch that's got all heavy metal music in it. I don't throw it away. I put it in a folder. I might not need it right then and there. I might be working on a series that needs songs from the 50s through to the 80s, and none of it's heavy metal, but I'll put it in a category because I will use it one day. There'll be a scene somewhere down the line.
I have a question. Or actually, I want to emphasize something. Because we're songwriters here, the demo versus master thing is really important. And remember, we're trying to make somebody's job easier in finding our music. So yeah, you don't send demos. What Michael needs is a finished master, because not only will he have to see past the demo stage and imagine what it'll be like, and you could ruin it by making a master, because he might have, as he said, fallen in love with that bare bones version that you've sent, and then you put a bunch of crap on it. But not only does he have to see past that, but he would then be asking all of the other people in the chain to see past it as well. And it's just not going to happen. So I just want to emphasize masters.
That's a good point about, I wouldn't send it off to anybody down the chain just yet either. But no, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And that's really part of the question is, if I send that and you like it, would you pitch it? It's hard to pitch demos. It's sometimes hard to pitch a song that's fully recorded without people seeing it to picture. I can envision it pretty quickly. That's 20 years of experience. But I can hear a song and go, that would be great over this. I mean, we all do it. Even when you read a book, you probably think, oh my gosh, that great Olafur Arnold score that I saw in that movie would be fantastic here, or that Jitters song that I heard would be great here. Some people can do that, and that's great. But a lot of people need to literally see it against the picture, properly edited.
We hope you've enjoyed this little taste of the SongStudio workshop in Toronto in July 2022. Stay tuned for more.